Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. We begin tonight at the White House, where the bill to release the Epstein Files is now awaiting President Trump's signature. As of now, there's been radio silence. No word on when or even if that's going to happen tonight. After months of intense opposition and a rare display of unity in Congress, President Trump has promised to sign the Epstein Files Transparency Act into law. And let history note that it required a dead sex offender to prompt the first real moment of bipartisanship we have seen from this 119th Congress. If Trump signs that bill tonight, the clock ticks to December 19th. That would be the 30-day deadline for the Justice Department to release all of the Epstein files related to its investigation. And there are a lot. Tens of thousands still in the DOJ's possession. That includes flight logs, bank records, emails, and other personal communications. But there are concerns over whether Attorney General Pam Bondi will actually release all of them. Last week, Bondi announced an investigation into Epstein's ties with Democrats, including Bill Clinton, after President Trump urged her to do so. That open investigation could prevent the DOJ from releasing certain information. It's the same reason why the Biden administration did not release the Epstein files. The case against Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell was going on during the Biden presidency, and after her conviction, so was her appeal. So this new probe comes 4 months after Bondi said case closed. Nothing left to see here. So what changed? Why did she open this brand new investigation? Well, here's what the Attorney General said today.
There's information, new information, additional information, and again, we will continue to follow the law, to investigate any leads. If there are any victims, we encourage all victims to come forward, and we will continue to provide maximum transparency under the law.
But even if all the files are released, then what? Is this really about transparency and justice for the victims? Or is this about political persecution and looking for dirt on President Trump? Either way, the fallout is already hitting former Clinton Treasury Secretary and former president of Harvard, Larry Summers. He is resigning from the board of OpenAI, along with other commitments, after emails released last week showed him asking Epstein for advice with a woman who presumably wasn't his wife. Let's go now to NewsNation's Joe Khalil, live for us on Capitol Hill. Joe, what are we hearing from lawmakers about all of this? They sent the bill to the president's desk hours ago.
Yeah, they did, but there is still some doubt and a lot of skepticism, Elizabeth, that this is going to be a smooth process and that the Department of Justice is going to simply release all the files, even if that is what is expressly in this new bill that becomes law when President Trump signs it. A lot of this is going to be in the hands, frankly, of President Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi. Now, the clock starts, Elizabeth, the minute that President Trump signs this bill into law. That is the 30-day clock. And at the word of this bill, what it says is that within 30 days, all of these files have to be released. But as you pointed out, there are investigations now that the Department of Justice has already opened up that very well may complicate things when we talk to not just lawmakers, but also those Epstein survivors. Many of them say they feel like their fight is not done yet because they also don't have a whole lot of faith, many of them, that the DOJ is just going to release all of these files. Take a listen to what we heard here from senators on both sides of the aisle, some skeptical, some hopeful, but all of them wanting seemingly the same result here.
I think he will sign the bill, but I don't think he will release the files, no. I think he will do every possible thing he can to hold on to them or to release only small sections that don't give us the full picture.
We voted on it today. The president will sign it, and this shouldn't be a new issue, so they should be ready to go. I hope they release them immediately.
Now, interestingly, Elizabeth, in the bill that passed, this was, remember, sponsored by Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, Republican and Democrat. Massie today said for anybody who thinks they could just open up an investigation and use that as a pretext to stop the release of the files, there is something in the language of their discharge petition, of their bill, that actually says that the bill itself is going to supersede investigations. Now, I think legally there's going to be a lot of questions there, and there may even be lawsuits, because remember, Bondi opened up this new investigation before this bill became law. So you kind of think of a basketball analogy, for example. If a player lets go of the ball before the buzzer and it goes in after the buzzer, it still counts if it's out of the player's hands. If this lawsuit or if these new investigations were launched before the bill became law, that may change the dynamic. And again, it is going to be an incredibly complicated path forward. But a lot of people certainly hoping that all of those files are released and transparency at least begins here.
All right, Joe Khalil, live on Capitol Hill with a basketball analogy for us all. Thank you so much. Let's get reaction now from Democratic Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado. He's a former Army Ranger and a Bronze Star recipient. Congressman, great to have you here. So what do you make of all this? AG Bondi has vowed to follow the law, but this bill still does allow her to refuse to release any files that contain classified information, that identify victims, or that would jeopardize an active federal investigation.
Well, Donald Trump and Mike Johnson have spent all year trying to do everything in the book and out of the book to prevent the release of these files, including shutting down Congress twice for a month to actually slow down the release of these files. So I think you can expect them to continue to do everything possible to try to obscure, hinder, and stonewall the release of these, because very clearly Donald Trump is very scared about what's in those files.
The bill has been at the White House now for several hours. What do you make of the fact that he has not yet signed it, and we can get no word from the White House on when that might happen?
Well, he might sign it, he might not sign it, but even if he does sign it, I think what you can expect to see is every opportunity by Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice to impede the release of those files. And you know, let's not forget that a week ago, they reinitiated an investigation, and what that might allow them to do, or what they might say they can do, is prohibit the release of the files because of an ongoing investigation. Of course, they could try to keep that open permanently and then never release the files. So again, this all comes down to the fact that Donald Trump really doesn't want people to see his involvement with Epstein, his involvement with this sex abuse scandal, and is going to do anything and everything, lawful or unlawful, to prevent it from being disclosed.
I want to ask you, Congressman, about a video that you and other members of Congress just released. You are all veterans in this video. It's called "Don't Give Up the Ship." It's gone seriously viral, and in it, you all encourage troops to refuse to follow illegal orders. Here's a clip.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk. This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
like us. You all swore an oath.
To protect and defend this Constitution.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
But from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
Critics are calling this video subversive and dangerous. They say you're inciting rebellion and mutiny. Your response?
Well, anybody that has any problem with us saying obey the law and follow the Constitution, that kind of tells you everything you need to know, right? The people whose minds are blowing up when somebody says follow the Constitution, obey the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and follow the law. You know, they clearly are the ones that have the problem here. This is the same stuff that I trained my platoon on before we went to Iraq and Afghanistan, the same stuff that our privates get trained on in basic training. You follow the law, you follow the Constitution. Your oath is not to an individual or to a political party, it's to this country. That has never changed, nor will it ever change.
You're a former paratrooper, Army Ranger. You know better than most how crucial the chain of command is. You say you can refuse illegal orders. You must refuse illegal orders. What exactly are you telling the soldiers to do? Stand up and say no or quit?
No, we're telling the soldiers exactly what they're trained to do in basic training. Like I just said, you have to follow the law. Right?
But what does that mean precisely?
Is really important, but above the chain, it means you follow the law. It means that if there's an unlawful order, if you're asked to violate the Constitution, you're not obligated to do that. And let's use some examples, by the way. So Abu Ghraib prison, right? There were privates and junior enlisted who were ordered to do things that were unlawful, and 11 of them ended up being criminally prosecuted. The My Lai massacre in Vietnam, where you had Private Durst and a warrant officer refused to massacre civilians. They were the heroes of that moment, but their commander, their Lieutenant Calley, actually ordered it, and he went to prison. So there are example after example in U.S. military history of people that are asked to do things that are unlawful, usually, almost always involving committing violence or crimes against civilians that uniformed personnel are obligated to refuse if that's what they're ordered to do. And we're concerned about this, Elizabeth. We're concerned about this because of the rhetoric of this president, right? The president actually said, hey, can you shoot these people in the leg during the Lafayette Square protests?
But that wasn't an order. I think that was a question, right?
And this president has a long history of saying nefarious and dubious things, right? But you don't ever wait until an order is actually given to train people and tell them what their obligations are.
So to be clear, to be clear, Congressman, you're not saying President Trump has already given any illegal orders, are you?
We're not talking about specific orders. We're talking about the general obligation of uniformed service personnel to follow the Constitution and follow the law and the Geneva Conventions. Right? That is an obligation that always exists.
We just had the commander of the U.S. Southern Command resign, reportedly because he thought the orders he was being given to bomb these alleged drug boats off the coast of Venezuela were illegal. Do you think they're illegal, and do you think his behavior in that case was appropriate, and is that what you're encouraging our soldiers to do? Quit.
Again, to be really clear, I'm not talking about any one instance. In that instance, I have deep concerns about this president's use of force against a variety of actors in the Caribbean without congressional authority. You know, I went to war 3 times for this country in Iraq and Afghanistan. We spent $3 trillion in these wars over 25 years without votes, without accountability, without money spent and appropriated by Congress to support it. And look what happened. They ended poorly. So I'm deeply concerned about the fact that this president does not see a problem that he thinks he can't bomb his way out of. Right? This is the most interventionist president I have seen since I've been in Congress, and as a combat veteran, I'm deeply worried about it.
All right. Congressman Jason Crow, appreciate your input tonight. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, turning now to the Middle East, where the 5-week-old ceasefire in Gaza is hanging by a thread. Israel launched a wave of strikes across the Strip, including in a residential neighborhood of Gaza City. Dozens of Palestinians are said to have been killed in the strikes, which Hamas leadership called a, quote, dangerous escalation. The IDF says the strikes were in retaliation against, quote, Hamas terrorist targets. That is after gunmen reportedly opened fire on Israeli soldiers in the southern city of Han Yunis. Israel said it has targeted a Hamas command center in Gaza City in its operations today, and that 2 of the terror group's military leaders were, quote, probably killed. So what does all this mean for President Trump's ceasefire moving forward? I spoke just before air with America's ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. Ambassador, I would like to get your reaction on this attack by Hamas and then the IDF assassination attempt of 2 Hamas leaders. Is this going to imperil this already fragile ceasefire?
I don't think so, Elizabeth. There's certainly going to be moments that things get very fragile. I don't think any of us doubted that that would be the case. But the ceasefire is holding. I can tell you, as someone who, for the first time in over a month, is no longer dodging ballistic missiles, it's been a remarkable period of calm. Now, there's just moments that will happen. Hamas has not completely given up. And I think Israel is within its rights. They have to strike back when they are attacked by Hamas, when they break out of these tunnels. But I think overall, if you look at it, the president's plan is moving along very, very effectively. And what's most remarkable is that the various Arab nations who came together at Sharm el-Sheikh to sign the agreement are holding firm.
Yeah, you say Hamas hasn't given up entirely. It's actually, they're reasserting themselves. President Trump won a big victory on Monday when the UN approved this whole peace plan in Gaza, but almost immediately Hamas balked. The terrorist group's refusing to disarm unless there's a Palestinian state. And if Hamas doesn't disarm and continues to fight, it's out and about, it's reasserting control in Gaza. It's going to be difficult to convince countries to send their troops into Gaza. Nobody wants to go in there and fight Hamas.
No doubt about that, but I think the other piece of that is that you've heard it both from the president and from the Israeli prime minister. Hamas can do this the easy way or they can do it the hard way. Sooner or later, they're going to disarm. They're not going to stay. They'll have no role in the future of Gaza. The president has made that clear as consistently as he possibly could. So they can wave their arms about and carry out nefarious actions, but ultimately they're done there. And the sooner they recognize it, the sooner that they lay down their weapons and give the people of Gaza an opportunity to have a future and a life, the better off everyone's going to be.
Meantime, I want to ask you about something that's making a lot of headlines today. There's been a wave of attacks, really bad attacks by right-wing settlers in Israel, roving gangs of masked men and boys rampaging through Palestinian villages in the West Bank, beating up people, setting fire to a mosque, even attacking the IDF when it tries to stop them. This has been going on for some time and seems to be escalating.
I think there is some escalation. Let's be real clear that most of these acts on the part of Israeli attackers who are committing acts of terrorism, and let's just be blunt, that's what it is. Israelis can carry out terrorism as well. But most of these people are not actual settlers who live there. There may be some, but this is a very small number, mostly of youth, angry and disaffected. These are thugs. Many of them don't live even in Judea and Samaria. They come into there to create havoc. In addition, you have a number of attacks of Palestinians toward Israelis. You had a situation where there were a couple of Palestinian terrorists who used their car to try to ram Israelis, killed one. It is a very tense time. We don't want to pretend that it isn't. But there's been every attempt on the part, I will say, even of the Israelis to say that those who are committing acts of terror, even if they're Israelis, they're going to feel the full force of the law. And Elizabeth, they should. The only way to bring some settlement is to have equal justice. Crime is crime, terrorism is terrorism. Doesn't matter who does it. They need to be consequenced and harshly.
Yeah, the Israeli president called this violence by, he said, radical settlers shocking and serious, and that it crosses a red line. A retired Israeli general from the IDF placed the blame on the Netanyahu government, saying Israel is reaping what it sowed. The entire racist policy of pushing and harming Palestinians while giving Jewish terrorism complete freedom of action. He said the state has lost control. He is not the only former or current member of the government or military to be saying this.
I think we have to recognize the Israeli people are about as divided regarding the prime minister as the American public is about the president. You'll find some people that will blame President Trump for any and everything they don't like. And in Israel, you'll find people who will blame the prime minister for any and everything they don't like. The truth is, these are the acts not of the prime minister, and when it's in America, it's not the acts of the president. These are acts of people who are acting outside the law, and they're committing terror, they're committing acts of crime. And I'm much more, I think, in tune with the words of the president, President Herzog, and the actions of the Israeli government, who are arresting these people, and they're holding them, and they are promising that they will bring them to full justice, which is exactly what they must do.
And, you know, I just very quickly want to ask you about the announcement from President Trump yesterday of the sale of the F-35 fighter jet to Saudi Arabia. This is something Israel was very concerned about. Right now, Israel is the only country in the Middle East to have these jets. They're the most lethal advanced fighter jet on the planet right now. There's concern this could tip the military balance in the Middle East if Saudi Arabia has these jets. What are you hearing from the Israeli government there?
I don't think they're overly worried. They know that there's still statutory requirements from the United States that Israel has a superiority in terms of defense mechanisms and
right. We
US
have an
weapons.
agreement with Israel that they are supposed to have military superiority in the Middle East.
Correct. Right. So I think that they believe that the U.S. is going to honor that. And so selling some F-35s to the Saudis to give them the ability to protect themselves, perhaps against Iran, is not in and of itself something that would be offensive to Israel, as long as they maintain, again, what is a statutory requirement that they have superiority.
I guess the question being, does this tip us away from that statutory requirement? I'm sure Congress will be taking that up. This is something Congress must get involved in as well. All right, Ambassador Mike Huckabee, thank you so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right, coming up for us, NASA unveils new images of the interstellar object known as 3I Atlas. Does it put to rest the question of whether this is alien technology? Harvard scientist Avi Loeb joins me next. And later, the state of California says it was not responsible for monitoring that burn scar that developed into the deadly Palisades fire. So how did NewsNation's Rich McHugh just obtain evidence that shows a state parks representative with firefighters at that site days before the fires scorched several towns? That exclusive is coming up next. All right, so everybody's been debating for months whether this interstellar object known as 3I Atlas is a comet from another solar system or an alien spacecraft, perhaps with bad intentions. Well, tonight we may have the answer. NASA just released several new images of the unusual interstellar object and confirmed that it is, in fact, a comet. If you're bummed out about that, don't worry. There's still plenty to be excited about. 3I Atlas is still very, very rare. It is just the third known interstellar object to come from outside our solar system. And now we have these new pictures from NASA. The images were gathered from several of its cameras and telescopes on Earth and near Mars. The agency says it learned some interesting new details about the comet.
Hubble's images revealed was a few things. First, a teardrop-shaped coma of dust coming off that solid, icy nucleus of the comet itself. From these data, astronomers were able to more accurately narrow a few things. Importantly, the size of the nucleus. We now know it's between, at that point actually, we knew it was between 1,400 feet in diameter up to as large as 3.5 miles in diameter.
That's a huge range. A 1,400-foot diameter would make the object 4,400 feet around. And while a 3.5-mile diameter would give the object a circumference of 11 miles around. My next guest spent months pushing for these images to be released, so is he now convinced that it's not alien technology? Let's ask him. Harvard Professor Avi Loeb joins me now. Okay, Avi, you've been telling me for months now that you think this might be an alien object. Is this a disappointment?
No, because there wasn't much new information released. In fact, we knew most of the details that were mentioned today from the scientific sharing of data from the Hubble Space Telescope, the Webb Space Telescope. And what they uncovered was the skin of the object, basically that some ices and perhaps some dust that evaporates when the sun illuminates that surface. But even if you consider a spacecraft that travels through the cold interstellar medium, it would accumulate over time ices and dust on it that would be released, and you don't need large quantities to explain that data, and you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover.
So wait, so are you saying it could still be an alien object?
Well, I'm saying the data that was shared today did not provide us with new information. And in fact, the NASA officials did not address the basic puzzles about this object. The mass of the object is 1,000 times more than the previous one, 1,000,000 times more than the first one. Why are we so lucky to receive such a huge package? Why is it flying in the plane of the planets? Why is there much more nickel than iron in what it sheds? There are lots of puzzles that were not even mentioned. And, you know, as Sherlock Holmes noted, there is nothing more deceptive than an obvious fact. They basically say that it's a familiar comet, but are not willing to address those anomalies. They didn't mention any of them, and there are no solutions as of yet. In fact, the most exciting data was collected in recent days by amateur astronomers. They did not invest $1 billion in space telescopes. They used amateur astronomer telescopes that you can buy in thousands of dollars, and they provided us with insights about the jets coming from 3I Atlas. We now have an opportunity in the coming days, the coming weeks, to observe these jets and figure out where they originate and conclusively say whether they come from pockets of ice on the surface of a rock or from thrusters.
The comet or the alien object, because obviously you think the jury is still out on this, it will fly closest to Earth on December 19th. What will we know definitively at that point, when it's the closest it'll come to the Earth?
Yes.
Or I guess when they start like coming, you know, when they start landing or sending aliens out to...
No.
I'm kidding, but you know what I mean.
I mean, yeah, a simple detail is to figure out where the jets are coming from, because if they come from ice that is sublimated by sunlight, we know the characteristic speed of the volatiles that come out of that, and we know how much mass will be evaporated and the composition of that. So if we find that we can explain all of these components with a natural origin, then the case is closed. However, if we find a much larger speed than expected from a natural object, it might be that this is a technological signature. So I would say by December 19th, we would have enough data. There would be a flood of data that would tell us what this object is, but let's wait and see.
Do you think NASA is open-minded, or do you think NASA's just decided it's a comet and we're going with that?
Well, bureaucrats or unimaginative scientists want us to believe in the expected. But the rest of us know that the best is yet to come. You know, life is worth living if we allow for the unexpected to surprise us. And, you know, science is a learning experience. All I'm suggesting is let's collect more data to figure it out for sure, because we cannot be sure right now.
Well, in terms of unexpected surprises, we've reports that there's a rock that NASA discovered on Mars that it says shouldn't be there. What do you make of that?
What I make, well, I would argue we should go there and either take a sample or examine it more closely. You know, obviously, if it looks like a rock, it's probably natural, but we should study those. You know, Mars is a museum that collected things on its surface because it doesn't have an atmosphere. Whatever collided with it was left on the surface. So we should then treat it as a museum and check all the artifacts on it.
Yeah, NASA is saying apparently it's made up of components that it looks like it came from some sort of meteor, so that something landed on Mars, that it did not come from Mars. So
yeah. That's possible. But so my point is, let's stay curious rather than know the answer.
You don't have to recruit me to staying curious, Avi. I'm always in to be curious. Thanks so much for joining us, as always. Coming up for us, we have a NewsNation exclusive. Our own Rich McHugh will join us live with some video and photographic evidence that the state of California did know about that simmering burn scar that erupted into the deadly Palisades fire. He'll join us next. Turning now to an update on a NewsNation exclusive, our investigative correspondent Rich McHugh has obtained pictures and video that indicate the state of California may not be telling the truth about the origins of the deadly Palisades fire. Let's get right to Rich. Rich, you say you've managed to get your hands on some photos that contradict the state's position that it was never there monitoring these embers from the Lockman fire that exploded, of course, into the Palisades fire.
Yeah, this is a stunning development, Elizabeth. This photo and these photos and the videos are a big deal, and here's why. On Monday, the state reportedly told the court that nobody from the state was inside the Lockman burn scar talking with firefighters in the days leading up to the Palisades fire. But these photos and videos prove them wrong and shows that the state may have lied in court.
All that's burnt right down to that little bush right there.
In this video obtained exclusively by NewsNation, you very clearly see a state parks representative talking with firefighters on January 1st where the Lockman fire had burned.
You can still see smoke.
Photos appear to show the same thing.
Everything smells like burnt wood.
The Lockman fire had been set by an alleged arsonist the night before these images were taken. Underground embers from that fire reignited 6 days later, starting the more devastating Palisades fire, killing 12 people.
Holy shit, I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Governor Newsom initially said the state was all over it, that he pre-deployed 110 trucks to Southern California. Later, his CAL FIRE admitted they did not pre-deploy a single truck to the Palisades. And recently, his office tried to distance him from the fire, telling us, quote, "The state didn't start this fire. That was an arsonist. And the state wasn't responsible for responding to or monitoring this fire." Then, in court documents, the state said it wasn't notified of the fire. But we obtained Los Angeles Fire Department call logs, which show not only were they notified, they sent a state parks rep within hours of the Lockman fire. Then, in court Monday, they denied it altogether.
We brought up to the judge that we had received reports of a state park representative being on site at the Lockman burn scar speaking with firefighters. And the state lawyer stood up and told the court this was the first he had heard of it and he thought it was ridiculous, and that just didn't happen.
It very clearly did happen, as this photo taken at 2:43 p.m. on January 1st shows. You can see a state parks rep speaking with a battalion chief and 3 others. In another, she is walking with a firefighter in the burn scar and then talking with them in front of their fire trucks. And of course, in this video, too.
The state's narrative that they had nothing to do with it and it's some other agency's fault, it's their responsibility, it's not ours, flies in the face of the evidence. The state was deeply involved in what was done at the Lockman fire burn site, as evidenced by the photographs and the documents that we've obtained.
Now, California State Parks says we've mischaracterized this and says that having personnel on scene does not mean that they are in charge. Governor Newsom's office did not answer our specific questions. They reiterated their previous statement that this lawsuit is baseless. Now, one more thing, Elizabeth. The judge in this case just ruled that discovery can begin and formal depositions can begin soon.
Rich, it sounds like from that statement you got from California that they're now saying, okay, yes, the state parks rep was there, but she just wasn't in charge, after saying that nobody was there?
That's exactly right. They're mischaracterizing. They're saying we didn't say that, but even though these state park reps were there, doesn't mean that they were in charge. Not to mention, though, Elizabeth, this was state land, and their own manual essentially says that they should have closed the park.
Right, but importantly, after saying there was nobody there from the state, they're now saying, yes, there was, she just wasn't in charge. Rich McHugh, stay on top of it. Great reporting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up for us, if you haven't heard of the gaming platform Roblox, your children probably have. In fact, it's come under a lot of scrutiny lately because of fears that very young users may be talking to dangerous adult strangers, even predators. A top Roblox executive joins me next. If If you have children at home, you're no doubt familiar with Roblox, the wildly popular online gaming platform that allows users to chat with each other while they're gaming. It has 150 million users worldwide, 1/3 of them under the age of 13. The problem, of course, is that any place that attracts young kids is likely to attract predators as well. What applies to real-world playgrounds applies to digital ones. That problem was eminently foreseeable. And yet, Roblox is now facing dozens of lawsuits from parents and from states in this country, alleging the company has not done enough to protect underage kids. Now, the platform is rolling out new steps, it says, will strengthen protections for children. That includes age checks using facial recognition software. In order to chat, you now need to scan with a selfie. And then Roblox will put you in a chat room with others that are your age. The company says this will ensure that adults are not mingling with kids. But will it work? To explain more, we're joined now by Nikki Jackson-Colasso, Vice President of Global Head of Public Policy for Roblox. Nikki, great to have you here. So, there have been at least 35 lawsuits filed against your company, accusing the company of negligence, even wrongful death. Several states have taken legal action. What do you say to parents who say, you're a little late to this game?
Yeah, we want Roblox to be the safest place on the internet. And what I think is really important for people to understand is that unlike a lot of other online platforms, Roblox started as a place for young children. It was actually started as a place where they could learn about physics and learn how to manipulate blocks. So unlike other platforms that say, hey, you have to be 13 to use our platform or another age, we have always built our platform with the youngest and the most vulnerable populations in mind. And so safety has been part of our focus from day one.
You've got all these lawsuits saying you failed. These lawsuits are accusing you of negligence.
Well, I want to start by saying that we have 150 million daily users, the vast, vast majority who are having a positive, creative experience on Roblox. But, I think that our goal is really to continue that mission that we started, which is to protect young children and to, in a way, lead the industry. So today we're talking.
Okay, so tell me how this new technology works, this selfie scanning. I mean, first of all, that seems like I can just go get my, big brother to scan his selfie, and then I can get into a room with older kids. And in other words, easy to manipulate or no?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll start by saying it's not really a selfie. What the technology does is that it uses the camera on your phone to take a photo of you. You turn your head to the right, you turn your head to the left. So it has to be you. It's safe, it's private, it's very accurate. And in the same way that, we all started opening our phones with our faces, 10 or 15 years ago, and that took some getting. This is the same kind of idea. We want people to feel really comfortable with this simple and accurate check that will allow kids to continue to talking to kids and make sure that they're in a walled garden so they can't have conversations with unknown strangers or adults.
You know that parents, and I know that you say you've got 150 million daily users. It's a lot of users. And, we're talking about less than 100 by far lawsuits, but these parents and attorneys general in several states say that children can be groomed and abused in these kinds of chat rooms. There have been a lot of questions about online safety and a lot of evidence, both anecdotal and documented, that it's not just Roblox, it's other sites as well, that this is dangerous to have kids so young online. The National Center on Sexual Exploitation actually said that Roblox is a mainstream contributor to sexual exploitation.
Well, what I would say is, I think these questions are very normal, natural questions from parents who want to understand and better control how their kids are living their online lives. I'm a parent, and I don't think tech companies can have any ego about answering these questions, not just Roblox. I think this is an industry responsibility. But what I also want people to know is that Roblox does things like, we don't encrypt any of our chat. You can't share photos on Roblox. You can't share videos on Roblox. Even before this announcement today, we've announced over 145 new safety tools in the last year. And so there's no silver bullet when it comes to online safety, but our goal with this, again, is to keep kids talking to kids. And we'd also love to see the industry follow suit. It can't just be us, it's got to be other platforms as well.
That would sure be great. More safety online. Nikki Jackson-Colasso, thank you so much from Roblox. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right, coming up for us. President Trump said he would sign the Epstein Files bill into law as soon as it got to the White House. Well, it's been there now for many hours, and we're still waiting. Chris Cuomo joins me live next to discuss. We need your help to honor the incredible women who make a difference in your community. 125 extraordinary women from across the country will be selected as finalists for next star's Remarkable Women contest. To nominate a remarkable woman changing your community, go to newsnation.com, newsnationnow.com, and search Remarkable Women, or just scan that QR code that's on your screen. Chris Cuomo joins me now. The stash is looking better, definitely filling in a teeny bit. I continue to say it's a terrible look for you, but I know it's all for a good cause. So.
It is. Movember.
And my son, Sam, who's doing the same thing you're doing, is actually doing a halfway decent job growing a little bit of something.
Well, you're probably comparing him to me. That's why it looks like he's doing well.
You'd have to all fall short.
You have to compare him to a man with real genetics that can grow a beard, not to me. But that's okay. Movember matters.
You've got Bill O'Reilly coming on the show tonight. Does he have any insight as to when President Trump is going to sign this Epstein Files bill? It's been sitting on his desk for hours.
No, but I'm sure that he'll have some interesting takes on how bad the left is and disingenuous about Epstein and other things that are going on. And I think it's always interesting to hear how he tries to explain what seems so obvious to me.
Which is?
That things are completely dysfunctional. And that this administration is shedding MAGA support, not because it's getting old, but because it's not standing up to what it was supposed to be.
Okay.
And I think that's why we keep getting distracted, because the truth isn't a great story.
All right, it's going to be an interesting show. I'll be watching. Have a good one.